Week 15 Business Law, presenting by Mr. Edgardo L. Magalso, MPA. Objectives. By the end of this lesson, the audience will be able to define defective contracts, identify badges of fraud, explain rescissible and voidable contracts, and understand the concepts of ratification and annulment. Introduction to defective contracts. A contract is an agreement between two or more persons that creates obligations that must be fulfilled by law. It is usually made when parties agree to give something, do something, or not do something. A defective contract refers to a contract that has a problem or flaw in its validity or enforceability. Even if a contract exists, certain legal issues may affect its effect or its ability to be enforced. In simple terms, defective contracts are agreements that are not completely valid or have legal defects that may allow them to be corrected, canceled, or declared invalid. Types of defective contracts. Rescissible. Valid but can be canceled if it causes damage. Voidable. Valid at first but may be annulled due to defects in consent. Unenforceable. Cannot be enforced in court unless ratified. Void. Has no legal effect from the beginning. Badges of fraud. Definition. Badges of fraud are circumstances or signs that indicate a person may have committed fraud when entering into a contract or transaction. In law, badges of fraud are used as indicators to help courts determine whether a transaction was made to deceive creditors or avoid legal obligations. Rescissible contracts. Definition. A rescissible contract is a contract that is valid and legally binding, but it can be canceled because it causes damage or economic prejudice to one of the parties or to a third person. The main characteristic of rescissible contracts is that they are initially valid, but may be rescinded to protect the rights of those who suffered damage. This concept exists in law to ensure fairness and prevent unjust situations caused by certain agreements. Examples of rescissible contracts. One example of a rescissible contract is a contract that causes damage to creditors, such as when a debtor sells property to avoid paying debts. Another example is when a guardian enters into a contract that results in financial loss for the ward or the person under their care. These contracts may be rescinded by the court to protect the interests of the affected parties. Voidable contracts. Definition. A voidable contract is a contract that is valid and enforceable at first, but it may be annulled due to defects in consent or because one of the parties lacks legal capacity. The key characteristic of voidable contracts is that they remain valid unless they are challenged in court. For example, a contract entered into by a minor may be considered voidable because the minor may not have the legal capacity to give full consent. Examples of voidable contracts. One example is a contract that was entered into through fraud, where one party intentionally deceived the other. Another example is a contract made through intimidation, where one party was forced or threatened to agree. The contract based on mistake can also be voidable if one party misunderstood an important fact that affected the agreement. Ratification. Ratification is the act of confirming or approving a contract that was previously defective. When a voidable contract is ratified, it becomes fully valid and cannot be annulled anymore. For example, if a minor enters into a contract and later confirms it after reaching legal age, the contract becomes valid through ratification. Annulment is the legal process of canceling a voidable contract due to defects such as fraud, mistake, intimidation, or lack of legal capacity. When a contract is annulled, it is considered invalid, and both parties are generally required to return what they have received from each other. Annulment protects parties who were unfairly influenced or who did not give proper consent in the agreement. Summary. In summary, contracts are agreements that create legal obligations between parties. However, some contracts may contain defects that affect their validity or enforceability. Defective contracts include rescissible, voidable, unenforceable, and void contracts. These classifications help determine whether a contract can be canceled, corrected, or considered invalid. Understanding concepts like badges of fraud, ratification, and annulment is important because they help protect fairness and justice in contractual agreements.